Welcome back, everyone, to Accounting Conversations. I'm so excited to be joined this week by Derek Henry, CPA. He is a consultant at Workday and also is the owner and operator of Excelevate. And he is not only the second funniest accountant on LinkedIn, but he is an Excel expert and has developed a package of Excel macros, that help accounting and finance professionals in their daily work. So excited to be here today with Derek. He's been a mentor and a friend to me in the past, and I'm so glad that you guys get to listen to him. Derek, thank you so much for being here.
Of course. Thanks, Chayton, for inviting me, even on a Friday. I'm in a central zone, so it's getting a little closer to happy hour for me. But yeah, you came to me with, kind of wanting to see what the career path has been for me and what I do on a daily basis and some of the cool things I do outside of my day jobs.
Yeah, I think it'd be best here if we start out with a little intro. I know you have an immense amount of experience and you've taken a little bit of a different CPA career path than most accountants do. So maybe share a little bit of your background and how you've gotten to where you got today.
Sure. So I graduated from Texas A&M in 2003, so almost just over 20 years now, which makes me feel super old. I did my bachelor's in accounting, my master's in IT. My dad's in IT, so he said, "Hey, if you're going to do something else, you got to get a certain number of hours. Do IT. That's going to be huge." And lo and behold, I'm working for a company that does accounting software amongst other things. So I like to think my dad was had a really good crystal ball. I did public accounting, did 5 years at Grant Thornton as an auditor, mostly financial auditing, but also some IT auditing. I mean, Sarbanes-Oxley kind of came out around then, so I got some experience on to see the chaos that was. I jumped into industry after I was like, this whole partner track thing maybe isn't for me. Let me see what else is out there. And I had a perfect opportunity to follow my left. It was really close to home, and this is back before we could all work remotely. So 10 minutes away when you're in the Dallas area, which is humongous, was just like, you can't beat that when you got a newborn at home. Made sense to kind of make that switch. So I did corporate accounting, mostly financial reporting, SEC stuff for about 10 years. Obviously some other stuff mixed in there. One of the places that I was at was Del Frisco's. Great steaks, you might have heard them before. They're now owned by Landry's, so the big conglomerate restaurant space. One of my, I've written macros all over the place. I had an awesome class when I was at A&M that the professor really taught us how to think efficiently and out of the box and really challenge the status quo. And very thankful for that. I mean, to this day, I think that was the most impactful class I had in college. All this accounting stuff, it's great to have a firm foundation, but you're going to learn so much on the job. Like we just discussed before you started the recording, like some of these digits, you're not going to use that kind of stuff. You're going to lose a fraction of what you actually learn, and the rest you're going to learn on the job, and it's going to stick because you're going to use it repetitively. But without having a firm foundation in Excel, I mean, it's the most important app that's ever been built, in my opinion, and most people would agree with that. So getting a good foundation out the gate really helped me for all the things I was going to do. I had an experience on one of the first projects I worked on where we were out of town working on a job with a lot of my colleagues. We had such a small amount of space. I couldn't even use my mouse. I couldn't even move it. I had like literally shoulder to shoulder like on an airplane. So I got really good at keyboard shortcuts real quick. I wrote some macros to combine steps because I can't move enough to get this done the way I'm used to. So that really started a lot of the efficiency mindset that I've got. A lot of things did, but that was a catalyst. And I've been making macros ever since. It's one of the many things that help you work efficiently. A lot of new tools, Power Query is another one that's huge right now. I definitely would encourage people to dig into that a little bit. The dynamic array functions, I mean, that's like transforming the way people are using it. So when I was at Del Frisco's, my boss said, "You've made all this great stuff and it's saving us a lot of time. You should sell this." I'm like, "All right, well, let me see what that looks like." I found out how to make an add-in and I launched it a few months later. So that's something that's been out there. I haven't promoted that heavily as I could, just because I've had a day job pretty much all my life, all my professional life. I've been putting a lot out there recently just to kind of sprinkle that in and plant the seeds with people. But using something like that, all this stuff, I kind of made it universally useful. So not like specific, like, oh, do this thing and then move on. It's something that you might want to have in every file you're working on, or at least available. That's where add-ins are awesome, because it's all about reusing your effort, setting defaults, setting favorites, and just getting more done. So I did that. I also made a career pivot. So like I said, public accounting, corporate accounting, and then I went into one of the pieces of software I use is called Blackline. You might have heard of that in accounting. It's something that helps with reconciliations, kind of track the close, intercompany, a lot of really cool things. I had used it a couple of times. I thought this is really cool software. If I'm ever going to pivot and get into kind of a technical sales role, why not do it with something you're familiar with? Best career decision I think I've ever made is moving into a role like that. It's nothing like I was, used to. It's definitely a change there, but it unlocked talents I didn't know I had. Presenting, storytelling, dad jokes, all these different things I didn't realize were talents that kind of came and it came to me very quickly. So I had a lot of success there, won a lot of awards. I find myself now at Workday. Blackline's not really doing as well as they did when I was there. A lot of market competition is kind of driving that. So when I thought, where else could I work and leverage those skills and really enjoy what I'm doing as much as I did there, I cannot think of a better place in the entire world to be a solutions consultant like I am than Workday. It's an awesome product. If you don't know much about it as an accounting and finance student, I would look into it because it's really changing the way that accounting is done at the kind of the ERP level. So that's like 3 or 4 minutes of rambling. I'm going to pause there for a minute, turn it back over to you, and just see if you want to unpack any of that.
Yeah, I love all that. I love how you've leveraged your career in accounting and the skills you developed there to move into other roles like what you're doing right now at Workday. I think that's a testament to how innovative accountants are, but not only that, but how the skills you develop as an accountant flow all across the business world, not just in accounting, right? I mean, you
Sure.
see accountants that become controllers and then become CEOs. You see accountants that go and do investment banking. You see accountants that become entrepreneurs and don't even deal with the financials anymore, but because they've developed those analytical skills and can understand businesses, it has just set them up so much better. And I think that's why I, as a student, am so bullish on accounting right now, is because I see people like you who are going out there and are pushing the limits of what accountants can do and still leveraging those same skills that you develop early on in your career. I love that. To go back a little to your Excel experience, so tell us the story of like when you found out about macros and how that influenced, like, so I imagine when you were telling the story of like being in a closet and like not even being able to use your mouse, you're probably doing an audit in some warehouse and they had you in the custodial closet or something and you were having to figure everything out. Tell us what that experience was like when you found out, oh, like I can leverage my Excel skills to do this.
So great question and great a couple of stories here. So first of all, my dad threw a VBA book on my desk when I was in high school and said, "Hey, I recommend you learn this." I was like 15, about to look into working like a movie theater or something, and I said, "Ooh, okay, fine, I'll look at this." And after about 20 minutes, I'm like, "All right, I'm bored." And then all my friends are working at Six Flags. I said, "The girls are there. I'm going to go work there." And looking back, I'm like, that was the dumbest thing I could have done. I didn't meet any girls worth dating. I wasted so much time walking across the park not getting paid, and I made like nothing, right? Meanwhile, a couple of years later, I met one of my friends who actually took a similar advice that his dad gave him. He was making 30, 40 bucks an hour as a 16-year-old because he was doing some very light level coding. And I'm like, man, but you know what? God has a reason for what happens to us. I believe that everyone's got kind of a destiny, and you have to live life in a certain way to really understand what your purpose is. So, okay, I have to say that to set the stage, right? I hated programming, right? Did not like it. I took it in computer science in college and in high school, Java, all the things, hated it. But when it was presented to me as a challenge to solve in that Excel class that I mentioned, that's when I was first exposed to BVA, where she had us do something torturous, like, okay, I want you to update all these rows. And we're like, that's really boring. When she showed us how to automate it and think, okay, before you really start to go nuts in this, kind of think through the steps, use that logic. So going back to why accountants are so valuable, they're very logic and control minded, right? When she had us do that, I'm like, this is kind of cool. And it became kind of a game. It was like, how efficiently can I get this done? It was like lowest score on the golf course, right? So that planted a seed, and it showed me how to kind of do things. The biggest thing I will say that Excel really got right way back then was the macro recorder, because I could say, I want to automate this, and it would record my steps. And I could look at the code, and it's very English like. So you can kind of figure out some of it and then
Yeah.
Google the rest. To me, that made it extremely easy to find that. And it really gave me a love for wanting to code to an extent. I mean, it's not something I'd want to do 24/7, but I do enjoy the projects I take on. So when you fast forward a year or two to when I was in that, at that op, it wasn't an audit, it was a fix the books thing for a big healthcare company. And it wasn't a closet. I mean, there were 200 of us that flew in from all over the states into this one place. And you can imagine they don't have just 200 extra desks sitting around. So they shoved us into like a little area where, in different groups, like my group, there was 50 of us or so, where maybe 15 people should have sat. Like there's probably fire code violations. But I had no space, and I'm thinking, all right, I need a shortcut to highlight cells. I need a shortcut to jump to this other worksheet or whatever. So I would record my actions, edit a little bit, assign it to a shortcut, and move on. Now, what I've learned since is putting everything in your macro, in the personal macro workbook. That's okay. That is better than nothing. But every time Excel crashes, every time you need to switch, you have to reassign all these shortcuts. And these are the things that I built into this add-in because they're challenges and pain points I hated. So now it's very easy to share the configurations, like your favorite colors and your favorite, values when to paste, like PVC stamp, make it white, make it red fill, make it bold, center, like all those itty bitty micro steps are all savable. So you can reapply that over and over. And that's kind of the one thing I would say to your audience, to think efficiently. And no matter what you do, it could be just life, right? The way that I do that is think once, apply often, and refine when you need to. And I'll give you an example of what that's like. Building a cheat sheet. Grocery list is a great example. So many people are like, oh, I got to go to the store. So they start making this grocery list from scratch. Guess what you were going to do? You're going to forget half the things you really need. Think about if you're a restaurant, if you did that, you would be out of business because you wouldn't have half the things you need to make because you don't have all the
Yeah.
ingredients for the recipes. So they use a par sheet. It's like, here's the list that we're going to start from. If anything is not on the list, we're going to add it to the template, and we're going to start from the template. Reusing your thinking in that way makes a humongous difference. And I've just tried to build that into hundreds of features that are useful. And you said earlier, finance and accounting, anybody that uses Excel will find things that they really like. Obviously, that's kind of the audience that's in Excel nonstop. So that's kind of what's, really got me into this. And it's kind of an obsession, is what my wife would say.
I
Say
love that.
passion, obsession, they're pretty, there's really a fine line between those, right?
Well, and so what advice do you have to students from that perspective? When you're first starting out, getting started with Excel and macros and coding, from personal experience, I have 2 or 3 classes of Python and a class of SQL. So I haven't done much with macros, but I've coded before. So what's your advice? Because for me, I'm a fluent Spanish speaker, and
Yo también.
learning Python was harder than learning Spanish for me. I could not wrap my mind around it. But the things that you can do with Python once you know how to do it, and it's the same way with any programming language. The
That's right.
time you're able to save and the things you're able to do make it so worth it. But what would your advice be to students who are trying to get past that? Oh, I got to put in the work and the effort now to reap those time rewards over the next couple of years.
Sure. I think having a basic understanding of how pretty much any programming language works is huge. That's one of the courses I teach, is like VBA basics. And I'd say at least half of that is like programming in general. So if you can understand how variables and constants and arrays kind of play together, variable meaning, oh, x equals 1, now we're going to make it 2, now 3, and kind of loop through. Looping is another key concept in programming. And then logic, like if statements, like if this, then do this, otherwise do this. And there are many spin-offs of these concepts, but if you can understand them in one programming language, like VBA would be the first one that I was really exposed to that I actually took seriously, unlike the others where I didn't care. I've taught myself JavaScript and PHP because of a web-based app I was making. I got most of the way done. I kind of got burnt out and focused more on career, and it has now been 10 years since I've touched that. That really helped because now with the Excelevate website, I'm putting cute things on there. I shouldn't say cute because we're recording this, but valuable, helpful things on there. Like I just made one, like here's like 500 keyboard shortcuts or something, and you could search through it and you can favorite it. You can show me a random one. Many of those things are driven by JavaScript. And because I had done that before, it's like, riding a bike, picking it up
Yeah.
after 10 years. So I think if you have a foundational language, the syntax is quite different between them all, but the logic is the key thing. If you can kind of think about how it should work and how to troubleshoot it and that kind of stuff, it makes it so much easier to pick up another one. So you mentioned learning Spanish. I've been using Duolingo to learn Spanish for 4 years now. I'm nowhere near fluent because I only really do the fun little games each day. But it's still something where if I got stuck in, a Spanish-speaking country, I could find my way to the Baño and some other places, and I think it would help me. It's just like anything. There's a learning curve. At some point, there's an inflection point where the learning accelerates, and I'm at the point where I could learn very quickly if I was forced to, for work or something. It's like that with programming languages, and I'm really thankful for BVA because of the recorder. I'd say 80% of what I've had to develop, I could record and see what happened and then tweak it. And again, the internet is full of great examples after that. Now, I will say this. A lot of the people I follow on LinkedIn, I have such a big smorgasbord of people that are on there, and a lot of it's finance and accounting, but there's also a lot of sales because that's kind of what my role is now, is supporting sales. There's a guy on there named Chris Orlub. I think he was the chief revenue officer at Gong, which is a really, really cool tool that kind of records and does a lot of AI around note taking and things when you're on sales calls. So he shares, this guy's amazing. I cannot believe how much wisdom comes out of this guy on a daily basis. Like light years out of anybody else I've ever seen. One of the things he says all the time is you are not years away from success. You are skills away from success. You can learn the hard way, trial by error, or you can buy into things. Now, if your company's going to pay for it, great. What do you got to lose? Like, they're sponsoring you to learn.
Yeah.
Like, that's your job, is to, not just earning, you're learning, right? That's a big tip in itself, is to never stop learning. I mean, like, ever. Find the things you're passionate about, develop that wide base of things you're generalist, and in a couple of things that you're deep in. Some people call it a T. I'm like, that's not enough. That's not enough bars. You got to have like an M, be deep in more than one thing. So hopefully that was helpful in your response, on your answer. Like, how do you get started with something like a language? What really helps catalyze it is you have to have a need. What are you passionate about? A big problem that people have, I think, in general today, so many distractions, is awareness. We're to some extent, everybody on the spectrum of, we're walking through life just like a robot or a zombie, or we're incredibly intentional and aware of what we're doing. So to help get started with something like VBA or whatever it might be, look for opportunities like, okay, what am I doing repetitively every single day, every hour even sometimes? How can I take 3 steps into 2 or 1? Even if it's micro things like a shortcut, like those add up very quickly. I can promise you that some of the shortcuts I use every day save 5 hours when you add it up over the year. Now multiply that across 50 shortcuts. 250 hours a year is like significant. Like, now we're talking about 2 months or so. So hopefully that's helpful on, kind of efficiency, programming, all the things, right?
Yeah. So outside of Excel, how do you strive for efficiency in your life? Do you have a little rope tied to your lawnmower that goes in circles so you don't have to mow it? Do you feel like that idea of efficiency is kind of bled into everything in your life?
Absolutely. I mean, so I'll take a step back. I had a great training a few years ago, again at Del Frisco's. I was only there about 20 months or so, and I had so many impactful like life events happen. One of them was a workshop on accountability. And it's not something I'd ever thought about, which is kind of funny given that accountant has always been in my title. And when I asked my kids, I was like, hey, do you know what that means? They're like, the ability to be an accountant? And I'm like, that's cute, but no. So accountability is all about, it's a step above responsibility. It's like taking ownership of all the things that, you have reign over or can do. And it's all about aligning to core values. Well, we had redefined our core values there, and they said, I challenge you to develop your own personal core values. And so I did that, and I came up with, and it really ties into when I was interviewing there, they said, describe yourself in 1 word. I was like, well, I'm efficient, I'm resourceful, all these things. When I had that training, I said, let me go back to the drawing board, and I redefine my 1 word, this is an epic interview question, by the way. It's something I would ask people sideways, up, down, whatever way. I think it's a great way to understand what people are about. I redefine my 1 word as heart, because it means passion. It means empathy and love and compassion and all those things, which that's a great word to have, especially if you're going to lead people or be a part of a big team. But it's kind of a cheat because it's an acronym, and accountants love acronyms, right? It means hospitality, efficiency, accountability, resourcefulness, and tenacity. And I try to live those out in my everyday life, professionally, personally. and beyond. I don't have a lawnmower with a string attached. We have a pretty big yard, so we kept going with the lawn crew that the previous owners had like almost 8 years ago now. I don't like that, but it is what it is. But yeah, with anything I'm doing in life, I try to think efficiently. Like, what's the most efficient way to get to, the store, or how can we knock out these chores quicker? Something like that. It's all about. It's kind of time and money. There's a balance there because time equals money. So if you can find a way to save some time, it's probably going to equal saving money. It's a way that I just kind of think now. Efficiency with time, obviously, probably the biggest one. Money, I hate waste. Space and energy, all four of those things. I think people could benefit from thinking about how can they, improve on, if not maximize the efficiency.
Yeah, I think just the consistent mentality of wanting to be better, not
Yep,
becoming stagnant, always wanting to just take that next step. I think it makes a big impact on you as a student. I mean, and beyond, studying for my current exams, it's like, well, all these habits I'm developing now, I'm going to have to use to pass the CPA exam. So it's
absolutely.
it all just builds on each other, and then that leads to even more building until, we act, it never ends. We just keep
It
growing.
should.
So
Yeah, if you're doing it right, continuous learning is so important. I want to touch on something you mentioned earlier about accountants making good entrepreneurs. By default, actually, I think they don't. I think you really have to expand your skill set a little bit. And I'll give you an example. Um, Accountants tend to be perfectionists. I know we have this concept of materiality, but the kind of people that are attracted to accounting tend to be type A, anally retentive, is what my professors would say. Perfectionists. That does not work in the world of entrepreneurship, because if you try to make everything perfect and plan it out just perfect, your opportunity will be gone before you get started. I literally had that happen with the web app I was talking about. I spent so much time trying to make every little detail so perfect. Is a complete opposite approach as Jeff Bezos does. He's like, minimum viable product to make us profitable. We will earn the right to live another day and refine and refine and refine. And that's the right way to do things, is just to refine it. What do we need today? It's not the same thing as we'll need tomorrow. And that ties really well with continuously learning and improving.
yeah, I love that. Kind of going on with that. So if you were to go back now and talk to, pre CPA Derek, what would your tips be? So a majority of my listeners are current accounting and finance students. What do you think are the most important things that the young people are doing now to be prepared for their careers?
The world is quite a bit different than 20 years ago. I mean, you think I was in your shoes when 9/11 happened, and I started out as a genetics major, which that didn't last but 3 weeks because I can't stand biology. Like memorization stuff to me, no. But problem solving, challenges, puzzles, I like that. That works. I think, I'm big on Excel. I think something that has always made me stand in my career, and this is not going away. Like through both of us getting through our careers, and obviously mine's closer to ending than yours is. I mean, unless you hit the jackpot, hey, and if you do, kudos to you. I don't think Excel is going to go away. So many things rely on it. There's import and export buttons everywhere, and I think that there's so much. I mean, you see the product really evolving faster than ever. Having an understanding of that is going to be huge and set you apart. It absolutely did for me, and I think that's still valuable. Um, I think learning how your brain works and how to take notes. Like, you see so many kids like writing down everything that the professor says. That is not the right way to take notes. Kind
Right.
of put an outline there. You want to trigger it, and your notes really are an extension of your brain. That's something I'm going to be writing about pretty soon here in the next probably 2 months. And how do you do that? Because a lot of people, they write down notes and they never refer back to them. Well, why did you even write it down? What's the point of that? Other than maybe there's a neurotic might be probably not the right word, but a connection to your brain of it. So I think learning how you learn and learning how you take notes, and then how to follow up on those notes, reflect. One thing I wish I had done, and I would advise, is write something down every day,
Hmm.
because after, even if it's just one little thought, like the goofiest thing that happened, you'll have 1,000 stories in 3 years that you can reflect back on. And storytelling is huge, and no matter what you're doing, it's huge in the role I have now, both kind of day job and beyond. But it's something that's really good as a part of a communication, because we could spout off stats all day, doesn't really move the needle. But when we share an experience, people remember that experience. That's what people buy on. They buy based on emotion. They justify based on analysis. And then if you can show them how you have a plan for them, well, then they get in a hurry. Those are a couple of things. prioritizing efficiency, accountability. I didn't connect and network near enough when I was young. You're doing a lot of that. That's how we met, right? So I think that's huge. I would recommend that for everybody to do more of that. I mean, I was like, I want to get my job done, go home. I play disc golf, so that's one of the things I was probably looking forward to. I didn't network near enough. Um, one tip I have, a couple tips I have on passing a CPA exam. I didn't pass the very first time because I took audit and reg at the same day. Don't recommend that. They split it up for a reason. It's a little different now, but I got
Yeah, I think
73s
the
on
rules are.
both of them.
Yeah, I think the
Yeah.
rules are quite a bit different now.
So I took it right after it went electronic. I was trying to get it in paper and pencil because everybody said it's going to suck. And I'm like, all right, I'll try, but I took too many grad hours. I just couldn't get it in. So I got 73s on both, didn't pass, and I was kind of upset about it. But then I said, I'm going to switch the way I'm studying. I'm going to get into work early every day, study while my brain is fresh. That doesn't work for everybody, but try it. You might be surprised. I was not a morning person until then, and now I am because of this. And take as many study questions as you can. Don't worry about studying the way that you did in college. Just muscle memory is what you got to build. I think that's huge for studying. There was one other kind of, I think
So kind of
mentorship is
touching with
huge
that.
too. Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of touching with that with the CPA exam real quick. Um, I didn't originally have this question planned, but you mentioned that repetition with taking the test questions over and over and over again.
Yep.
Is that the best way that you made the most progress? Is
Absolutely.
just taking practice test after practice test after practice test? Because there, from what
Yep.
I understand, there's a significant amount of material that you don't necessarily go deep into in school that is on the CPA exam.
Yes. Now, again, I would reach out to experts in this field because 20 years, a lot changes. There's more simulations now than I think there were before. But I tried to study like, oh, let me take the textbook, make an outline, kind of practice and read over and make sure I understand it. And that didn't work. I mean, because I get in the questions, I'm like, I can't really understand the context they're asking this as well. It
Yeah.
could be one of the, two or three of the four answers that are options. But practice question after practice question was huge. And I didn't get the luxury like a big Becker class. They gave me like, hey, here's a CD. That's how old this was. Here's a CD. Go practice the questions. And I said, I'm going to take every one of these at least 3 times. And that muscle memory just, it worked wonders. I mean, I don't feel like I put in as much time. And again, efficiency, right? I put in the time, but not as much. And I focused on that. And I got like 88s on everything. I study too much, really. So
Well, that's
find out
awesome.
what works for
That's
you. But
sound
I think,
advice.
yeah, don't do the same thing you did in college. I don't think it's really designed that way. It's just to prove that you really can think like an accountant, and you're gonna forget it all the next week or most of it. So
Yeah,
education at work.
I love that. Well, so two last questions here for you. Got kind of a funny, lighter question, and then an Excel based question. So let's start with Excel. Um, so let's say you have a student who wants to start to learn keyboard shortcuts, just the general basic ones that are in Excel, not ones that you program into
Sure.
your keyboard. What's the best way to do that? Are there any games? Should you just like go throw your mouse in the garbage? Like what's your best advice there?
Some people do say that they call it the no mouse club, where and they used to do that with analysts, investment banking. I've heard stories about this where they take the mouse away and see how long people can last before they have to ask for it back. Um, I think the biggest thing you do, there's so many shortcuts out there that you can, I provide guides. There's one on my website you can download that new, the new page I put out there. I haven't really promoted it yet, but I will next week I'm actually doing a post on keyboard shortcuts next week. I'll have a video on some of my favorites that I built and plus the native ones. Um, I would say, again, awareness, like what are you doing with the mouse? Because it's proven that the mouse is 3 times slower. Right. If you go try to press those tiny, stupid little icons, especially the ones that are like with a little arrow next to them, you end up pressing the wrong one. And just going to the mouse and moving it around, it takes 3 times longer. It's proven, especially if what you're trying to do is menus deep in there. So have an awareness of the actions you're performing the most. I mean, there's a reason, like I'm looking at my keyboard here on my over the side. Like the main shortcuts that work across apps, they're listed. There's a reason for that. At least learn those. Above that, what are you using the most? Write those down or use a list. Like the one I've got is both in PDF and Excel. So you can filter it by category and then print it out and like, okay, learn 1 or 2 a week. In a year, you're going to be like at expert level when it comes to shortcuts.
Right.
And a lot of these, again, work across different apps. Like learn them in Chrome, learn them in Outlook, learn them in File Explorer, Windows, Word, PowerPoint, whatever you're going to use. shortcuts, they save time. And it kind of gets you addicted in the way that they did to me. It's like, okay, what else can I combine now? Right. Then you kind of next level, you're like, what can I build my own, or can I leverage something like Derek built or somebody else? Right. That would be my advice.
Okay. Perfect. I like that. And then you share a motivational quote and a dad joke every week.
Every day, actually.
Every day.
Every day. So you're going to ask me how that came about, right?
Yeah, and you got to share your best one.
Man, I'm gonna have to pick a random one because I have too many that are best. I got one of them that got me started. I'll use that one. So where this started, this is a fun story too. See, I'm full of stories, right? Um, my kids, the COVID year 2020, they got me this little rip-off calendar, and I might still have. No, I've moved them up. They used to be on my desk. My kids got me a little rip-off calendar that had a dad joke, and they're pretty good. Like I probably saved 30 or 40 of them out of the whole year. And when I'd rip them off when I'd be about to get on a sales call, like a demo or a discovery call or something, and I'd be laughing, and a sales rep would be like, "What are you laughing about?" And I'd put it up over the camera, and they'd laugh too. Like, you got to like put that in your bio. You got to, when you say who you are, like you have to share that, and it'll be good. And what I noticed was a light switch flipped. People, their guard came down. You got to think, we're talking to accountants and finance people who are naturally skeptical. They don't want to share
Yeah.
anything on a sales call. So the guard came down and they were more engaged. They would actually answer questions when I'd ask, or they would ask questions of me. Like you could almost flip a switch and see that it was a complete difference, night and day. That just because I'd share a dad joke is like, oh, this is actually going to be a little bit entertaining. And it almost gave me permission to continue a little bit of humor and share stories and things like that.
Yeah.
So when I people, it kind of became a shtick. People would say, hey, have you heard this one? Hey, have you heard this one? I started writing them down, of course, in Excel, right? And I got to 400 or 500. I'm like, dang, I could maybe like make a thing out of this. Now I can just pick one. I started writing down quotes too. It's another really big thing where you can put on a slide and people are like, oh, that's kind of cool. I hadn't thought about that. Um, so I accumulated enough of these. I wrote a macro in my little tracker in Excel that would randomly pick one together. And then I wrote a macro that would put it in that format you see on LinkedIn that makes it look kind
Yeah.
of nice. And now it's a daily thing. I think I'm up to like 1,300 dad jokes and 600 or 700 quotes. I'm
Wow.
telling you, when I hear a good one, I'm like, that's cool. I'm going to write that down. And it kind of goes along with my mission to engage, entertain, and educate and empower. Those are kind of the four E's, I'd say. There's four E's and Excelevate. So I'm like, that's what they mean. Cute play on words. So that's where that comes from. And there's a gentleman who on his tagline said, funniest account on LinkedIn. I was like, I'm not going to go to battle with this guy. Clearly, he's already figured it out. I'll just put second funniest. And that'll make people want to know more about me and who the funniest is. And so far it's worked. Like a dozen people were like, what does that mean? So there you go.
Well, I feel like that's even funnier because I don't think very many people know who the funniest guy on LinkedIn is, but all the accountants I know you and know your dad jokes. So
That's funny. That's good. And if you like them, pass them around. So you said, what's the funniest one? One of the very first ones that I heard, I still think this is probably top 10. Two cannibals are eating a clown, and one looks at the other and says, does this taste funny to you? A little morbid, but what are you going to do?
oh, that's
So
good.
good one.
Well, I'm definitely gonna put Excelevate's website in the link below.
Sure. Appreciate that.
I definitely want my listeners to check out your add-in with all the macros. It has over 200 macros built into
Over
that add-in.
350 now. I'm getting close
Over
to 400.
350 now.
Yeah. I mean, I
You've
don't
been
look at it
adding
so
on to
much
it.
as, it's like Excel itself. You realize there's like 2,300 features in Excel. I don't know anybody who's used even half of those.
Yeah.
So there are things that are there for a purpose when you need them. There are probably 50 I would say everybody should at least try, and, at least awareness. Like, so you don't know what you don't know is not an issue. But there are dozens of things that everyone can use. A lot of it came from my time supporting retailers where you have data on every single sheet, and just navigation becomes an issue, and kind of summarizing all this data that's spread out is an issue. So there's several things like that. But I like to think of this as the building phase. There are tools that are better for automation like Power Query when it comes to the data ingestion and cleansing and things. But when it comes to really getting things done and navigating and diving deeper into the data, that's where I think a lot of this is extremely helpful. So
Okay. Well, so I'll link Excelevate down below, and if people want to connect with you, what's the best way they can reach out?
I think LinkedIn is good. So again, I'm Derrick Henry. I'm not the quarter or the running back for the Tennessee Titans. I got that a lot because I did when I'm on sales calls, that would come up. I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna get his autograph." They come on, I'm like, "Who's this guy?" I'm like, "Yeah, sorry, didn't mean to let you down." And it's funny because he came into the scene when A&M had moved to the SEC, so I kept hearing my name on all those games when Alabama played A&M, except that he's on the other team destroying us. So I'm like, "This is cool, but not at the same time." So yeah,
Oh,
hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to help. If nothing else, build connections and make other ones. I was kind of touching on a mentorship a little while ago. Mentorship is huge. There's so many different ways to be a mentor. It could be a sage or a surgeon or a sidekick or um, five types. They're evading me at this point, but that's another tip I think that anybody could benefit from, especially students, is don't just have one mentor. Have a handful from different perspectives. It is an incredible way to learn, but also help advocate for what you want to do with your life and find your purpose.
yeah, I love that. Well, Derek, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate everything you're doing on LinkedIn and the knowledge that you're sharing so freely about Excel and how that's been able to change your life. So I really appreciate that, and I know my listeners found immense value in listening to you today. So thank you so much, and look forward to keeping in touch with you. So thank you.
Of course, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, and look forward to doing this again sometime.
Awesome. Thank you.
Of course, you're welcome.